If you're not serviceable to God, is it because of your health, your physical health, or the lack thereof? What can you do to change that? In this episode, we're talking about the undervalued temple. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Lightweight Strength Academy podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Webster. Before we jump in with the team, just wanted to tell you all thank you for your support. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Just to give you a little bit of background about the Lightweight Strength Academy podcast. This podcast, our mission is to transform the body of Christ one rep at a time through a holistic gospel message that integrates the spiritual and the physical. We hope that you gain a lot from it, and we hope that you will be willing to share your thoughts on how we can better bridge the physical and the spiritual. Before we jump right into the topics, we're just going to go around and introduce ourselves, as this is sort of our intro episode. So I'm going to start with myself. My name is Daniel Webster. I've been a Christian for a little over 9.5 years, coming up on that 10-year mark. And I guess my love for health and fitness started back in about 2013. My father did a lot of weight training and resistance training. So sort of followed him to the gym. I was his little, pupil in the gym, helping him lift heavy weight off the bar that I couldn't imagine lifting. So then I got a chance to go to college for exercise science, began to train a lot myself in high school, playing sports ranging from football, basketball, and baseball. And been a personal trainer now for a little over 2.5 years, and now work as a wellness director at a independent living facility. They don't like facility, community. Sorry about that, community. And so that's been super cool and super excited to begin this collaboration with these wonderful people.
Yeah, my name is Richard Allen. I became a Christian back in 2007. So I guess, 17 years now, almost 20. Went to the gym with my dad growing up. He was huge into bodybuilding, tried to do competitions. So he'd also drag me around, and 3 of my siblings. So I grew up in that culture. And then in college, I walked on to the University of Arkansas State, played wide receiver. I learned a lot from a strength conditioning coach and been training people since then, and became a certified personal trainer back in early 2022. So a couple of years officially a trainer there. I work at movement gyms around Dallas, Fort Worth area, and train people in the garage and try to help them get fit.
All right. Well, I'll introduce myself next. I'm Destiny Dindy. I reside here in Fort Worth, Texas. I've been a personal trainer officially since about 2018. I've coached Little League football and things like that, basketball, probably since 2010, I believe. And it's been fun. It's kind of where I do most of my training now is with basketball and football. I do a lot of general population training as well here in the area. I've been broken in Aledo specifically. And also I went to school for exercise science as well. And I guess shout out to the dads, because it seems like everybody's been influenced by their dad as far as working out. So same here. And so I did that. My mom was also a nurse. So if you kind of look at exercise science, it kind of ties in both fitness and like biology and anatomy and stuff like that. And so that's kind of where my influence came from both my parents. And so that kind of helped. My mom was being a nurse. She letting us know about the different sight words that we needed. And that helped me pass my CPT test for sure. But other than that, I went to school for exercise science and played basketball for a couple of years at LSUA, and then moved from LSUA to USF in Tampa, Florida. And there's where I completed my exercise science major bachelor's degree, and also kind of got involved with some studies and different programs. So we were able to start the health science study club there, and then I was the vice president for that. And so it was pretty cool, pretty good experience.
Listening to everybody, I guess I'm the oldest or the sage, I guess, of the group in terms of age, and maybe even in terms of how long one has been a Christian. My name is Maurice Williams. I've been a Christian since 2000. Was taught the gospel when I was in graduate school. I've been in the industry for a long time, about almost 30 years. I think the end of this year will be 28 official. So I was certified, started in 1996, got certified in 1998. College professor, I've done the whole realm of fitness, from being a personal trainer in a gym to going off of my own training in people's homes to having my own studio. Now I do virtual training, and that's kind of part-time gig for me. My main focus now is I'm an educator. I'm a college professor. I also do some education for fitness companies. So I travel the country and teach workshops and things of that nature. Do some stuff within the brotherhood as well at conferences. So just love fitness, married, 4 kids. So a little bit about how did I get involved? Actually, sports. So my dad did not introduce me to some other stuff. My love of music is from him, but he wasn't necessarily a workout person. That came from playing sports. A little bit about me.
I think Maurice and Destiny, both of you have your own businesses, correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
Wanted to give a shout out to Maurice too, because Maurice was one of the mentors that helped me to go into personal training. And I remember being super nervous about it and asked him, and he said, just get into it now. And I think I was right in the thick of the exercise science degree. So definitely want to give a shout out to him. Appreciate him for doing that. And look, y'all, we'll just hop right into it. We have a discussion, I think, that is not only deep but necessary. And so to kind of set the stage, the Bible talks about this idea of our bodies being a temple. And I'm gonna read that. It's coming from 1 and it says, "Or do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body." Now, we think about this idea of our body being a temple. It seems like there are some things that are prohibited regarding how we are to treat our bodies, how we are to make sure that they are serviceable to God. And so I want to kind of discuss the significance of the temple, like in the Old Testament, not too deep into that, but just, what was the idea of the temple in the Old Testament, and then looking at it, how it was applied in the New Testament to the body. You remember how the priests went into the temple, and there were certain things that they had to do. They had to behave a certain way. They had to keep the temple up to a certain standard. And if we take that same principle and apply that to our bodies, it also seems that the Apostle Paul, who is the author here, is writing, he's encouraging us to do the same with our bodies. There's a standard that God expects when it comes to our bodies and how we are to go about treating it. And so let's talk about that idea. Thinking about the body as a temple, what would you all say is the biggest thing that we are to think about as it relates to our body being a temple towards how it's serviceable to God? What does that mean, talking about the body as a temple?
A couple things I think about. It's where people approach God. Also, it's where sacrifices are made for God. And so when I think of your body now being a temple, or the body of Christians being a temple, it's pretty similar to those two reasons, right? It's where sacrifices are made, and it's also where you're able to approach God and in his glory, able to approach him in his glory. So those are two things I like to think about.
I think of just 2 words come to mind, just the whole aspect of the temple in the New Testament and comparing it to our body. In the New Testament, I think of just it being sacred and the aspect of discipline, right? Of a certain routine or standard that had to be followed, and there were rules and regulations, and our body is one of the things that helps us in terms of being consistent and taking care of our bodies, is the fact that if we treat it as if it is, which it is, it's sacred. It's, we're a representation of God. And part of that is developing the discipline to keep it going. Because I think at some point, maybe later on today or another episodes, we'll talk about how it's not like we always are looking forward to doing it. Like we're super excited about it every time we do it, right? But we know the benefit, right? Especially as Christians, we know that we're pleasing God, but then we also get the benefit of the longevity of health and things of that nature. So, it being sacred and discipline are the 2 things I think about with the temple.
Putting it all together, kind of what you guys are all saying, I think of Romans, but mostly verse 1, with our bodies being a living sacrifice. I think it's important. I mean, obviously, know that was a part of routine in the temple as well. And I think it's important for us to think about how we can better ourselves as a temple, to be able to, I guess, be productive in the church. And so, I mean, it kind of all ties together as far as being the body of Christ and us being a temple, keeping ourselves healthy so we're productive in the church for sure.
I even think about too, just kind of bringing it even more so to layman's terms. You think about, it says, do you not know that your body was purchased with a price? Meaning that this equipment that we're walking around, it wasn't cheap. And so to treat it,
There you go.
you know what I mean? To treat it as though it's cheap, it's such it's not only dishonoring to God or dishonoring to our bodies, but it's dishonoring to the person who purchased it and gave it to us. I mean, one guy told me, and I think he was like 76 or so, but a pretty fit guy in the church. I met him at Polishing the Pulpit, actually. And he pointed out, he said, I just don't eat that cheap food. Body isn't cheap. And he went on to say, like, if God dwells in my body, why do I want God to dwell in a place that is full of, high cholesterol and all these other food-induced, diseases that we could avoid, but because we're treating our bodies as if, it has no sacredness to it, then we don't care where God dwells. We don't care if our bodies are up to par or not. And so I think about that stuff too. And I think considering on a practical level, as far as how God look at our bodies as a temple, we have to respect it. And that kind of looks forward to this idea of honoring God. But look, as we think about question 2, this idea that, God being the creator of our bodies, this is a huge talking point because, of course, you can get into the whole realm of, humanism where people kind of believe themselves to be their own gods. And, my body is my own. I have no various choices that I get to dictate. No other entity get to dictate those decisions for me because my body is my own. But I want to talk about the significance of, for Christians to acknowledge God as the creator. And part of that is just defining the body and its purpose. And to kind of begin with this, Richard said something to me like a few weeks back that I just cannot get out of my head. He said, we have to get away from and he's just talking about Christians in general. We have to get away from the point where we just use our bodies for more than just carrying around or transporting our bones. I said, that's good.
That's deep.
That is so good. I said, man, I know a lot of people that fall within that realm. It is sometimes it's due to ignorance, and sometimes it's just due to downright neglect of what God has given us. So I want to just talk about the significance of that point. What is the significance of knowing and acknowledging that God is the creator of our bodies?
You think of all the capabilities that the human body has, and I from our Christian worldview, but also secular worldviews, seems like everybody acknowledges Carl Sagan, very famous atheist. He referenced us looking at the stars and how complex they are and how intricate it is, and then we neglect looking at our own bodies, right? And then on top of that, we get this for free. Like we get all of this for free and all the potential there, and all we have to do is, if I'm given something that especially valuable, like I would want to look after it, because that shows respect to the person who gave it to you, I would think. And so with all these things, I think of it as, appreciation and respect toward the creator, giving us all the capabilities, whether it's through art or through the sciences or I'm a huge fan of sports, watching the Olympics or watching a variety of sports, right? And seeing what people can do with discipline and with training. It's insane.
Yeah, I agree, man.
That's kind of where I was going with.
Yeah.
To think, even just the fact that our bodies, we're a steward, like this, our bodies are a stewardship from God. Like he's driving, the nail on the head is that God was giving this to us. And why would we want to mess up anything that is so valuable and so precious? If somebody's giving you something, whether it's a car or something like that, just to borrow for a moment, you just want to make sure, don't touch it. You make sure the kids stay away from it, make sure the dog, you're really just trying to make sure it's safe and performing just as well as it was your first given. And so that's where I'm at with that. It just, I try. I know I'm not perfect. I feel like I'm going to get my toes stepped on a lot during this podcast as well, just with all of our brains together. But
Amen.
that is the biggest thing for me, is just making sure that every day, and I've talked to Daniel about this before, that's where the meaning of my brain came beyond our best. Is just the idea that we can always be better than we were, and the body is so complex, and it's like it's limitless as far as what we can do with it. I mean, every year you think every year that we wouldn't see anything new as far as how people perform with their bodies, and every year we're whacked, whether it's sports or it's like the Olympics or anything like that, or just in general, just what we're capable of doing. It's amazing to me.
There's a book that came to mind. I don't know. I'm not necessarily promoting the book on this, Daniel. I won't show it, but there's a book by Wayne Jackson. I don't know if you guys have read it, called The Human Body, Accident or Design. And there's a quote in here where it says, this is on the back. I'm not sure if this person's a member of the church or not, but Dr. Clark said, our physical bodies illustrate the wonderful design provided by our maker. And I think in the church, in the world, it seems like they are a little bit ahead of us in terms of understanding that. Maybe they don't attribute it to God, but they understand if you take care, the importance of taking care of your physical body and taking action on that. But for some reason in the church, we just have not really caught up to what the research says, and we understand what the scriptures say, but we haven't taken that and applied it as a whole. But I think once we do, we'll appreciate the fact that God designed our bodies, man, to where we're just supposed to move until we leave this. And for some reason, when the church, we have stopped moving and just blamed it on, well, this is what is supposed to happen. We can argue against that. But anyway, I don't want to get too far off on this. I'll just kind of leave it at that. Yeah, I think that quote there is great in terms of us understanding the importance of the human body.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that there is, and we probably talk about this at a later episode as well, but remember some years ago, the muscular Christian movement, I think it was, and how the YMCA came about, and I think it was largely a Protestant movement, but the purpose is, the point is they got the idea of how, important the body is to our faith, to our spiritual health. Because I think sometimes, within the church, as Maurice alluded to, those outside of the church do seem to have a greater understanding of it, and they're not so quick to divorce the body from the soul and or the spirit. They look at the body having, needing to be healthy in order to have a healthy spirit and or faith. So you think about when Jesus met people, I love how he fed them first. He didn't just start talking about all the spiritual stuff, because I'm not going to lie, man, you ever been in church and your stomach was growling and someone, they just keep preaching, they're going on and on and on, like, that's hard to do. It's hard to pay attention, when your physical body has a need. And so I think about that. You think like the codification of our DNA, all of that stuff, just one strand of it could completely, fill the King James version of the Bible over and over again. So you think about the masterpiece that is our body that God has given us. I mean, it's an incredible stock worthy of respect, because we are made in the image of God. And because of that, you think about God being this great warrior, this king, and he's given us a piece of him that we move around with. As Maurice stated, we have this ability to move. And that's another thing you see throughout the Old Testament and the Bible as a whole. Moses, he had his prophets moving around constantly. I don't know about the congregations where you are, but I've really been trying to get us involved in more health-related seminars and stuff like that. And we're going to talk about that later. Man, we did a walk around Jericho this summer, excuse me. Man, it was interesting. I'll just say that it was interesting. You'll be surprised how many people, it was a struggle to walk, being honest with you.
Yeah, just to that point, I'm not surprised. One of the things, since I've been here I think everybody knows where I work, the university where I work, but since I've been here, I really encourage, like a lot of us professors, faculty, staff, we live close to the university. Like right now, if I walk home, I'll be there in 11, 12 minutes. That's how close I am. And there are others who have that same boat, but they're driving, right? And I'm encouraging them to, and I have stuff to carry, I get that, right? So maybe you wake up a little earlier and you walk and drop your stuff off and you come back home and you do whatever you do and then you walk back, right? So it's just, we get into our routines and we get comfortable and it's hard for us to break. Like now we're getting into a whole nother mental, right? We're jumping to the mental part. So, because we got to overcome that as well. But yeah,
That's
I just
true.
want
Yeah.
to add to that last part that you talked about, your Jericho walk.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of mental
I think
involved
the
for sure.
American, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, you go, Rich.
I think the American culture, just how it's expected to drive everywhere, right? My wife and I, we lived in Europe for a little bit, back from 2016 to 2019, and everybody just walks everywhere. We lived in a big city. It had hills everywhere, and from our apartment to the church building was about 1.5 kilometers. Like it was a good, solid 15-minute walk. And then to walk back, you have a 7-minute walk up a hill to go to the grocery store. You have to now carry all your groceries with you because having a car is expensive. And then we moved to Mesquite, and I was a youth minister there. And we lived right across the street from the church building. And I'd just walk over there. And it's just such a short little walk, like 1.5 minutes to my office, right? And then you're sedentary. So it's just a bigger sedentary lifestyle here. Sitting around in the office, sitting around in the car. The times where you do walk, it's short-lived. Yeah, it's that also obviously goes into the mentality, but it's encouraged by everybody a little more here.
Yeah. I've definitely read some of the literature about European countries and how they get out a lot more than we Americans do, and it's unfortunate. It kind of leads also too into the next question. Like, is when you think about this idea of acknowledging God, being the creator of our bodies, and how we are to respect our bodies and make sure that it's serviceable to Him, would you say that the ignorance of the church at large concerning the human body serves as the primary culprit as to why many Christians undervalue their bodies? And what I mean by that is, I know Maurice hinted at it earlier, and so did Destiny. This idea that the church, like, we're not even involved in the conversation that too often, and really little to no involvement. And we talk about having the truth and teaching other people the truth, but it's like that is the one thing that gets neglected. And so you talk about the undervalued temple. You could also say the neglected temple. And so what causes that? Would you say that it's ignorance at large, that we should blame in the church? What do you think?
I'm not sure if it's ignorance or if it's even willful ignorance. I know, jokingly saying this, but I know that kind of when we think of the epitome of like a churchgoer and somebody who's a Christian, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be somebody who's probably not the most in shape person either. And I'm not saying to someone, but it's interesting to me because we're supposed to be very active in church. I mean, I just remember growing up, summertime, we were door knocking and we were moving. It's very active. We're doing the stuff, but so I don't know if necessarily it's ignorance. I just think maybe, I don't know. I don't think it's ignorance. So I'm still trying to understand. I'm still trying to figure it out exactly. But I think it's maybe a slight lack of understanding or education, or just maybe the actual call. I think this is kind of what the importance is of this podcast right now. There's actually need to be a call to action here. But I don't think it's something that people are like, oh, we don't know about it. I think it's more so something that we don't necessarily see as necessary, right? Well, see as important. Sorry.
I think there's some aspects of like fear and nervousness, like how much we think material things are vanity, like the flesh is an inconvenience because we're not in heaven, and all sin comes through fleshly things, right? And so it's hard to have a productive, active conversation about it with so many ideas out there.
Yeah, I think you're spot on too. Yeah. Just wanted to respond to Richard and Destiny's point real quick. I think, a lot of it seems to be, and I'm with you. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think that, being a preacher, I think I could definitely talk about it more. from the pulpit. I think, and this is me just looking at me. I definitely think there has been a huge failure on my part as someone who has the opportunity to stand before, God's people. And I just do not talk about health and fitness enough. Now, of course, I made great strides over the past year, but I definitely think I could do better, speaking about health and fitness and just our bodies in general, because, as Richard brought up, we don't necessarily, and sometimes it's like people may wonder, like, what's the point? Like the fleshly things are, they're not going to amount to anything anyway. And so
I jotted down a couple things as to why we don't appreciate or why we're not doing better with in the church with us taking care of our bodies. I think it stems from a couple different things. One, and this is in no particular order, physical education for some was not a place of happiness. That is where a lot of us learned our movement, learned exercise and games and fun. And depending on what your experience was with that, you either embraced it and loved it, or you went far away from it as much as possible. Because perhaps there were some activities and things that you were made to do that you could not do. You couldn't keep up with everybody else. You felt embarrassed. So anything involving movement, exercise, when you hear that word, you're like, nope. You immediately think back to, 5th grade or something like that. I think it's a little bit of that. I also think it's a little bit of tradition. At one point in time, it was taught that not to exercise because you could get a heart attack, right? This was, even as early as like the 40s and 50s, doctors were still teaching that, or at least recommending don't do that, because if you exert yourself too much, but it's still true, right? It's still true. You could potentially have a heart attack. A little bit of that. I think there's just some fear, and that could be from, you guys already mentioned that, not knowing kind of where to start. There's a lot of misinformation that is out there. And I would even I would take it this far, even the average person who does exercise, I would venture to say they still don't fully know how to do it the right way. So you tie that in, and then us not hearing about it, it's not being preached, it's not being taught as much as it should. So perhaps those are some of the reasons why. So doing what we're doing now, educating them and help them to understand that you can do this and you're not going to kill yourself, and you don't have to think about PE when you were younger, that sort of thing. So those are my thoughts. Sure.
So he made a mention of tradition. I think, and I'm gonna just give a disclaimer here, like endorsing progressiveness in the church for sure. But I think that with the tradition, kind of like you look at things like as minor as how we give, and there's people in the church right now who are like totally against with online giving and things like that, right? And so cash only. We're only doing cash. You can't think about lay by in store if you just can easily go ahead and Venmo the church real quick, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff like that. No, I mean, I'm being facetious here, but you get it. But I think the same thing with like fitness. Like I talk to my clients about like functional fitness in general. Like Maurice is stating, like back in the day, I kind of tie it with our work ethic too. Like back in the day, that there was more hands-on labor. We were very, very active. There wasn't sedentary jobs and things like this. So back in the day, we didn't have to actually preach fitness because people were active in general. And so now I think kind of it's something that needs to be talked about, because we can get to a point to where we're too lazy, or we're making excuses for not door knocking. We're making excuses. I mean, the potlucks are just getting, things like this. I mean, not to say that we just need to have Atkins and all this type of stuff for a potluck or anything, but I just think for sure it's something that maybe the church is not considering because we haven't got in with the times as far as that. And that's why I kind of brought the point up about giving. It's like, okay, it's not wrong to, I don't think it's wrong to give online. You still need to make sure that you're lay by in a store. It's a thought out, and it's a thoughtful process. But the same thing with fitness. I'm like, we do need to start incorporating how important that is for our Christian walk, because are you being the best Christian you can be? Are you being the most influential and active person in the Lord's church? Is it because of your health that you're not? Like if that is, and I mean, we talk about gluttony in the church, in the Bible. If that is a problem, that is a sin that can become a sin that becomes a problem in your life.
Look, boy, you hit a lot of nails on the head. I definitely agree. Did you have something, Maurice?
I was just thinking that the saturation when I have taught to the brotherhood, I almost physically want to not look the way that I look, because people have said to me, well, does that mean I have to look like you? Right? These are members of the church. And I'm like, no. This is years of consistent exercise, but also this is me doing workouts in a specific way to look the way that I'm looking. That's not what we have. That's not what you guys have to do, right? Get out and walk. Walk just about every day. Do your 2 days of weight training, total body. Watch what you eat, right? Eat more healthy than not healthy. Like, just those basic principles, if we're teaching those more, because a lot of times Christians will think I have to do CrossFit and I have to work out like every day for an hour, right? That's if you're thinking that, if you have that mentality, yeah, you're going to be discouraged. Like, you're not say, look, I don't even work out for an hour, and I've been doing this for a long time. So to go back to the original question, a lot of it comes from just, where do I start? I don't want to look like Maurice. It's going to take too long. I don't have the time, right? We have all these, and then you're overwhelmed. And if you have too many options or too many thoughts, you're not going to do anything. So that's kind of where we are with a lot of people within in the bodyhood, or in the brotherhood, rather.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It almost seems like, which is why I often hesitate to bring Jesus up in a lot of conversations that I have with, some Christians, because they see Jesus as not relatable. And so they relate more to like a Paul or, Moses or somebody like that. Oh, Moses lost his temper. I do that all the time. So it's easy to relate to him, And I definitely get that, because I've had people to say before, I go in the pulpit and, you'll be surprised what the little old ladies say. I mean, they'll say anything. To the point where, it's like, oh, I've never seen a buff preacher before, or, a preacher who cares about his body, which is interesting because, I think about, I've read, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the I think it's the Babylon Bee. I encourage you to check it out. It's like this little, they are believers, not members of the church, but they are believers. It's kind of like this satire, kind of dark humor, thing when it comes to, as it relates to like Christianity and stuff. So I came across this article a while back, and it was talking about, the irony of church leaders. I mentioned myself and how I can do better, as a preacher, talking about, health and wellness and fitness, and, from the pulpit. But, one thing I think that is definitely true within the church, even, you see, congregations kind of relaxing and they kind of let this irony persist in the church, where preachers in particular don't practice what they preach, especially when it comes to modeling and encouraging physical health and well-being. And so, quick example of that, they had on the top of the article, a morbidly obese preacher harpens on the sin of drunkenness. And I'm thinking, like, drunkenness is a sin, but he's just, this dude is all up in he's every bit of like 315 pounds, 5'8", something like that. And, he's harping on the sin of drunkenness, but has totally missed what is right before his eyes. I'm like, bro, you are morbidly obese and you're not going to talk about gluttony at all. And so it's interesting. I think there is a large part of, tradition that is involved. And as Richard stated earlier, there's a fear. There's a fear of, kind of turning people away or making people feel like they don't belong. Because as Maurice stated, like, oh, I got to look like you. No, you don't have to look like me. The point is to get you up and moving. That can eliminate, movement itself is medicine. That can eliminate a lot of the medicine that you take if you just get up and move your body. And so, again, not to harp on it too long, but it is, going back to that PE scenario. You think about in PE, I don't know how it was for you all, but I know for me, that's when we began to build our hierarchy. And so, the most athletic people, the most athletic people, if you're physically fit, you're gifted physically, then you automatically was considered cool, And so a lot of people kind of have, a little bit of anxiety when it comes to that, because of that hierarchy that was set up in PE.
Oh, well, I was homeschooled, so I was always that hierarchy. No matter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I teach a couple of physical education classes, and that is the number one thing I teach to the students here at the university is be mindful of, because you're a Christian, not only are you teaching them, whatever the subject is, but you're also very sensitive to people's fears and concerns. So like when you're teaching them activities, make sure you're grouping them. Like, don't put all the advanced students together and put all the students that are not advanced, right? Make sure you have a good mixture, and just be sensitive to who seems like they're not interested, or they seem like they're a little hesitant. So as we have Christian educators in these positions of leadership with respect to physical education, hopefully that we won't have what we may have experienced, right, when we were growing up in physical education.
That's true. I definitely agree. We, and especially when we get down to like this next thought of like, what's the point of it all? Like what's the point of this idea of taking care of our bodies? Why do we even consider it? Because I think a lot of people, they think like first, I'm just going to read that really quick. First, it says for bodily discipline or exercise, some versions have. I'm reading from the New American Standard Version. For bodily discipline or exercise is only of little profit, but godliness is profitable for all things, since it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. Now, it's interesting because I know a lot of people, you know how we are as people, right? If we want something to fit our agenda, if we want something to align with the way that we feel, we would totally look
I know
over
where
that.
you're going.
Hey, look, it's we would totally look over the part that says of little profit. It didn't say it was of no profit. And so,
man, they love. Come on,
yeah, it's true. It's true. It's like
come on.
I've had people to tell me that. It's like, well, look, what's the point? And that's that whole Gnosticistic, way of thinking and the belief that kind of started in the 2nd century, where they place like really little to no significance on the creation, like especially like the physical things, like the body. It's like the body, the body is inherently evil. What's the point of, trying to take care of it? We need to focus on the spiritual things. And so we totally neglect the body. And then you have a church full of people that are medicated. And then we normalize that because, don't get me wrong. I'm a preacher and I pray for people on the prayer list. But man, it seems like that prayer list, like some of those people don't have to be on the prayer list, and it's like, just change your lifestyle, change your mentality on moving, instead of saying, well, the doctor gave me pills, so I don't have to worry about blood pressure. I'm just going to keep eating the stuff that's getting me there anyway, and just take these pills to kind of subside that. What are you doing? So, what are your thoughts on
that? That's serious, man, because I don't think anybody could see me as like I'm not a compassionate person. I mean, I don't think so. If you know me, but I know for sure, looking at myself, is that sometimes I can get a little less compassionate about stuff like this, and not just because I'm in the industry, but just more so because as a grown person, with like as my dad would say, your grown self, you you can cause your own problems, and I will be there to help you, and I will be there to show you the way, and I'll be there to support even if I don't have the right answers. But if you know better, do better. And so I love you. I'm gonna pray for you. I'm gonna help you. But if we've figured out, if you talk to the doctors, you talk to specialists and professionals and all this stuff, and you have the answers you need, then yes, we'll pray for you. But faith without works, right? And I think that's like, this is definitely a big scripture for this. I was going to make the point earlier, like, if we talk about Christ being the great physician, right? Do y'all realize that a lot of the sin problem that Jesus encourages us to fix is usually always an action? It's always a do. It's not we're not going to go take medicine for it, right? To get this thing. So we'll consider Christ a holistic doctor, right? So go do something. It's not just about going to take medicine for it, because I hate the fact that 9 times out of 10 we're going to take a medicine to heal a symptom, to fix a symptom and not fix the problem. So we can pray. I think prayer would be kind of like a medicine here. We can pray about it. But are we doing other things to actually fix the problem, right? Are we actually hitting the problem head on with action? And so, yes, I can be compassionate. I'm going to help you. And that's my responsibility as a Christian, as a compassionate person, and as a personal trainer. But I'm also not going to sit here and baby you if you know and you just keep making excuses for it. So,
yeah, I definitely agree.
There's the one scripture that we're talking about now that directly talks about it, but there are some other scriptures that either directly or indirectly talk about it. So we mentioned 1 Timothy 4 and verse number 8, but if you look at 3 John 1 and 2, beloved, I pray that all may go well with you and that you may be in good health as it goes well with your soul, right? So good health along with what is going to be judged on the when Jesus, right, returns. If we look at the proverbial woman, she dresses her, Proverbs 31 and verse 17, she dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong, right? Proverbs 24 and 5, a wise man is full of strength. So while some of these may not directly be talking about physical exercise, I think there's enough in the scriptures for us to understand that outside of just our body is the temple of God. If that's not enough, we have enough other scripture for us to understand that there's no way around it, right? There is no, like, you can't say like God's not going to take the excuse that I just didn't exercise, right? I just didn't know how to do it, and because I didn't know how to do it, it's like, well, God has put people in place. I'm sure you've heard sermons on it, right? There's enough information that's put out. You have the knowledge yourself. You're smart enough. I've given you the brain power, right, to go and do the research on your own. We're just not hearing this enough. All right, we're not hearing this enough. And I think once we start hearing it enough and embracing it, then things will start to change. So yeah, there's plenty of scriptural support, man. Plenty of scriptural support for us to take care of ourselves.
Wholeheartedly agree. And I think part of it is we have to look at health and fitness and the way that we respect our bodies just as seriously as we do, the other, actions in the Bible that are required and things that are prohibited. If not, then of course it's going to continue to take the back seat in our faith. And, I think that's largely a part of the reason why health and fitness, is like that conversation is not often joined by the church. I'm gonna be honest. When I went to PTP and Maurice, I think they had your session in with, I think, college students and teenagers, I believe. But I remember walking up in that session and I was thinking, like, given the stuff, and I don't think it was a panel, I don't think, but if it was, I remember thinking to myself, man, this should be in like exhibit room A. Like this talk needs to be given to the entire body of Christ. Like, there's no way. I mean, so many people overlook it, and you can. I love my brothers at PTP. I love the guys that make it happen. How they come together. They use this platform to spread good. But I just think that you can see the bias against it, even when how the session is structured and who is specifically directed to. And so I think about all of that and just how we can sort of begin to emphasize health and fitness in the church. But as we prepare now, just to close out, I know we all got stuff to do. How can we promote wholeness in our congregations? Like, what are some practices, some practices congregations can adopt that will result in like a physically healthy church?
Preachers, if you're watching this, listening to this, please start preaching this from the pulpit, and not in a joking way. Right? I've heard people say so many times, sorry, I'm so passionate about this, guys. You guys might have to bring me down a little bit on this one.
Talk to us. Let's go.
I get very intense on this one. I'm tired of hearing preachers say the only time I lift weights is when I lift the fork to my mouth. As if like I get it, you're joking, but it's like, really? As if we don't have anything in the scriptures that says, we're not supposed to be eating or doing certain things when it comes to that. So the first thing is, and then I'll stop talking, let everybody else jump in. Preachers preach from the pulpit the importance of us taking care of our bodies on a regular basis. And when I say regular basis, at least once a year. At least once a year.
I'm not a wife or a mother yet, but that's kind of one of my biggest clientele, biggest population right now for training, other than children. And I think coming from this aspect, especially since he brought up the Proverbs 31 woman, is we can do, as women, we can do a lot, and we do a lot in the church and in homes. But I always say this, like we're talking about before, we need to use our bodies. If our bodies are not healthy, if we're not taking care of ourselves, how can we take care of other people? And I think that's the biggest thing. We, as women in general, just come up with a lot of excuses for why we don't take care of ourselves. But we be vain sometimes. We can hair, nails, and everything can be laid, right, man? But I'm like, yes. And then we have this culture. What did I forget? I'm forgetting. But basically, just encouraging big women, right? And I'm not taking that from people, but at the same time, health and wellness is important. And we can't just have a problem and then try to make it fun and famous and acceptable just because. And I think it could definitely go into the church. Can we make better decisions? We see all the gluten-free and vegan whenever we know somebody's got celiac or something like that. And we make sure at the potluck we do this. But how can we, if we're going to be that intentional, for somebody who definitely has like a illness from that, can we be more intentional about just being healthy when we're doing potlucks? I mean, you can have, people think that being healthy is just, it has to be greens and salad all the time. But how can we just be more, as you say, mindful with our decisions and things like that? And like I said, the biggest thing is I see is a problem in the church and just in general for women is that we don't take care of ourselves. And I think also we, like you mentioned with Paul and things like that, it's a lot of how do we be better Bible class teachers? How do we be better? How potential wives of preacher wives, potential elders' wives, modesty, right? So we definitely drill a hole in modesty, and I know it's always a problem, so that's a thing. But how can we drill a hole in people's brains about being healthy, so we can be more active and we can be more like productive and things like that? And then I saw a post on Facebook, and I forgot the guy, but he made mention of the fact that we will die for our kids, we'll do anything for our kids, but will we live for them? And I'll leave it there with that comment. But that,
Hey, Daniel, before you close out, can I just jump in and say one more thing? I'm polished in the pulpit.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. And you may not be aware of this. The first year I went to Polished in the Pulpit, I think it was 2012, I noticed what probably most of us have noticed, just how unhealthy the majority of the Christians that attended were. So I approached the director of Polished in the Pulpit and said, hey, this is my first time being here. It was great, but I've noticed this. What can we do? And the next year, I was on the panel. And since then, there has been an emphasis on health and fitness just about every year. So I think there was one year I couldn't come, so there wasn't as big of an emphasis. But the good thing about Polished in the Pulpit is they are willing to listen. So if you have an idea, and there's been good response from it too. I've had people reach out to me who I don't even know who they are, but they were like, I heard you were at Polished in the Pulpit. I listened to you, and because of you, I've changed my eating. I'm more healthier now. I've lost this amount. I'm thinking about one individual who lost like over 100 pounds because the way that I delivered the lesson struck a bell, or light bulb went off in their head, and they said, okay, now I got to take this more serious. So there's some good things that are happening right at Polished in the Pulpit, even if we're in those small rooms. Right, the word is getting out. People are going back and talking about, oh, you should have been at this, and they're listening to the thumb drives. So I appreciate Pops in the Pulpit and them allowing us to even have that platform, because it wasn't in existence. And I don't think it was because they didn't think it was important. They just didn't know who could we bring in to talk about it. So just something for us to know.
No. Thank you for expounding on that. I definitely agree. We the thing that I
remember when you started that.
Yep. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Destiny.
No, I was telling Maurice, like, I remember when he started that, and also his Facebook post. I was like, man, so I was fired up about it too. So
yeah, I definitely agree. I love watching your videos, man. You're very instructional, which is great. I think that, and relatable too, which is super helpful. And the thing I kind of wanted to end on too was, as far as like what can we do to kind of push this issue and hopefully provoke some action within the church as it relates to health and fitness. John F. Kennedy, he started this health and fitness movement back in the 60s. And before he took office, I remember just reading about this, and it was so profound to me. He took office and published this piece in the Sports Illustrated called "The Soft American," and he was specifically addressing the issues of the soldiers getting ready to go and fight and how they weren't, physically inept to do battle and stuff like that. And it was a huge problem. Of course, this began back with President Eisenhower, but he took up the ranks and really pushed the issue. And in fact, one of the things that he did that was so great was he not only frequently talked about the issue of health and fitness, but one thing he and his committee did, they made sure that he was a model for health and fitness. And you often had, images and stuff like that of he and his wife playing tennis. He was always active. Another thing that, even Barack Obama did, playing basketball or something like that, just pushing the idea of movement, which was super, super cool. And I think that, we can do that in the church, just make it relatable. You start a movement program. The church love programs, right? We can just start a program, have someone to head the program, and, we can kind of start that way. So as always, I appreciate you all so much for just being on and also just sharing your practical wisdom with everybody. And to those who are listening, we hope that the conversation that we've had have been very encouraging to you and informational. If you have any questions, please let us know. You can leave a comment under iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, and then we'll be more than willing to answer those questions. If not on the next episode, maybe we can do a live session or something like that to help answer those. But nevertheless, thank you all, and thank y'all for listening.